All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is the NAIA Speaker Series, and this is exciting. This is our fourth session that we've had. So we started out the academic year with mental health for student athletes, but it was targeted toward administrators and coaches, right? So that's an important part of the mental health experts on campus. Then we had a session that you're about to see tonight. We had student athlete mental health for student athletes. So our audience were your friends on campus and across campus and among the other 256 member institutions. So student athletes got to hear firsthand the beginning of a conversation. So it wasn't closure, it wasn't a counseling session, but it was the beginning of a conversation among yourselves, maybe on campus, maybe with experts that we have with us tonight from Cutler Wellness. So that was session 2. Session 3 was one for administrators that was about how to lead transformational change on campus through facilities. So again, athletics, as it grows, it can benefit campus, it can benefit the whole community. So these sessions that you all are a part of right now are discussions with campus professionals, with student athletes, with our friends from the business community, with experts in their field. Come and share insights with us that we might not otherwise have. So again, welcome tonight to our friends from Cutler Wellness. Betsy Cutler is here with Athlete Mental Health Link. Her colleague Max, I'll let her introduce in a minute. Her colleague Lisa here from Ath Mindset. And then also I want to give a very big thank you to our other guest that's joining us. Dranon Lennox is a football student athlete at Bethel College, the one in Kansas. And he also happens to be the chair of your National Association of Student Athletes. And if there's one thing that the national office has right, it's empowering the student voice. And the experts on campus, the student athletes themselves, they get the big picture. It's very important in order to have a solid student athlete experience that you are able to ask questions and have discussions and really get your thoughts and your voice out there. Speaking of which, tonight, here's a little ground rule for us. If you could, everyone, open up your chat. Open up your chat on the webinar. Take your time. Open up your chat. And then when you choose who it goes to, let's not put everybody. Go ahead and direct that chat to hosts and panelists. Hosts and panelists. You might have heard earlier that this is being recorded, and it is. There's some sensitive things that might come up, but we want you to know that before we share this with our colleagues on campus that weren't able to make it tonight, we are going to edit it down and remove any identifiers. So by going to chat and by making sure that host and panelist is selected, the 5 of us on this screen are the only ones that are going to see your thoughts, because we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to ask you some questions about your sources of stress and the people you turn to and the topics you want to hear about. But that's something that we will treat with confidentiality. So again, I've talked enough. Thank you to Betsy. Thank you to Dranon. And Betsy, as we get going here, talking about mental health and wellness for student athletes, I'll let you also introduce your 2 colleagues.
Thank you, Robert, for having us here from Cutler Wellness Programs. We have what we call, it's the Athlete Mental Health Link system, and that incorporates a number of different factors for campus, sport organizations, and athletic departments. We do educational seminars. That is one piece, is we do education. A second piece is we do consulting, and that consulting means that we may come in and do policies and procedures that are athlete specific for your sport organization or for your athletic department. We can also provide and design and create and moderate discussion panels on mental health, specifically athlete mental health. Come in and design that for a specific institution or perhaps a conference. The other piece of that consulting is we know that there is a missing factor for athletes, and that is athlete training trained clinicians that can be specifically dedicated to the athletic department. So much research shows that our athletes, it's confidentiality is extremely important. And the second thing is that they would like to have clinical support from people that understand their dynamics of being an athlete, specifically a collegiate athlete, and all the nuanced differences that go along with that. So they want to have clinicians that are trained in that. And so our strategic partner for that piece of our program is Ath Mindset, which is Lisa Bontasumi. And Lisa will be on and have conversation with us. So that's one piece of what we do. And then the other piece that we also provide is the Athlete Mental Health Link mobile app. And our mobile app, as part of that system, we integrate those specific mental health resources on that campus. The app is white label, which means that we get to put in that institution's logos, their community mental health resources, the context and the resources for their athletic department, as well as any defined clinical or sport performance that we'll go into a little bit later. And Lisa will have a comment about that as well. Or sport performance professionals are all embedded in the app. So that's kind of what Cutler Wellness does. And that's what the Athlete Mental Health Link system is. It's a comprehensive system that we hope meets the collegiate athlete where they are, providing them education, mental health resources, strategies, and ways to seek help in the palm of their hands, as well as educating their coaches. That's one of the big pieces of our program as well, and we'll go more into that later. But one of my colleagues in my company is Max Clark. Max, there is Max. Max will actually be on here in just a minute, and he's going to tell a little bit about his background, where he was, because he was a collegiate athlete too, and how he and I got to connect through Athlete Mental Health Link system. So that's the two people that we have here. I don't know if they want to say a quick hello, and then I'll dig into the program. Lisa, it looks like you want to say a quick hello.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Betsy, for that. You know, I think that I'm super excited and proud and honored to be a part of the Cutler Wellness, system, representing the third tier around, athlete trained clinicians. I've been a therapist for over 20 years and am licensed in California and Nevada, and recently pivoted in recent years to working exclusively with athletes from the collegiate, Olympic, and professional levels. And I'm now starting to scale up my company, Ath Mindset LLC, where we will have athlete trained clinicians and sport performance specialists in every state that NAIA schools are in. So it's super exciting. We're ready to serve, want to be there for the athlete who is a human and navigating everything that you navigate on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So super excited to be here, and I'll shoot it over to Max.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Max Clark. As Betsy said, I am also a part of Cutler Wellness programs. As she also said, I am recently I was a student athlete. I am still finishing up school right now, but 2 years ago I used to play collegiate baseball, and sort of my experiences with that and my struggles with mental health sort of drove me to become a part of this company, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I just want you guys to know, as student athletes in the NAIA across the country, that I'm here to sort of relate to you guys and understand what you guys are going through. And throughout this presentation, I encourage you guys, if you have any questions about mental health in general, or what our company does, as you start to hear a little bit about it throughout the seminar, I encourage you guys to reach out in the chat, like Robert said, to the host and panelists.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. I do want to say, that today is World Mental Health Day. And so as part of that, this is very timely that we're doing this. And let's go ahead and just dig right into the program.
Betsy,
Yeah.
I was wanting to do one thing. Round one was really good. I'd love to do just one thing real quick, just to get the audience participation before we launch into athlete mental health and wellness and the definitions. If we could, participants, and there's a few of our colleagues are even on the call that are in a bystander role. So I think I saw some athletic trainers. I think I might have seen some faculty athletic reps or some folks. Everyone, please, let's get in the chat, direct it to the host and panelists, and student athletes especially. Go ahead and let us know. I'm gonna put a question up right now to everybody. What are the primary stressors impacting you this fall? What are the primary things that are really causing you a little bit of stress that you're dealing with right now? This will help our panelists get a feel for what's going on campus.
Love it. Love it. And there'll be other questions that Robert is going to throw out in the chat throughout this session. So please answer. As he said, we understand confidentiality and privacy. And so, but understanding where you all are at is a huge jumping off place for us to go forward. So as you all consider what are your factors that are stressing you right now, let's talk in general about what is basic mental health. So basic mental health is our cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being. Basically, it's how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. It's those three things combined together. So we try to break down different factors that affect you all as athletes. And there's three sections. The first one is what we call trauma. And trauma can be a single episode, and that may be something that is a car accident, a robbery, maybe a death of a loved one. Then there's complex trauma. And complex trauma, or PTSD, is something where it's more episodic. It maybe last longer, and it could potentially happen earlier in your life. So that may be things like abuse, neglect, those kinds of traumas. And the earlier you experience them and the longer you experience them, increase that level of effect in your life. The second set of factors and I'm not going to highlight all of them. That's what we do when we give our educational seminars. But some of them, so then there's daily factors. That's the second set of factors that we look at. Those are things like your academics, your family dynamic, your peer group, nutrition, all of those, sleep, all those factors that you are in day to day. Then the third set of factors is your athletics, and that is how your sport takes a toll on your body, on your nutrition, on your sleep because of your schedule, the perceived or real stressors or expectations that you have from either your coaches, your family, your peers, family systems back at home. So those are all the kinds of factors and the different kinds of factors that affect you as a student athlete. I believe, Lisa, when we actually gave this to on Labor Day to a institution in California, and even there we kept adding more factors. And so just so you all know, there is a lot of underlying and daily things that you all have to go through just by being a collegiate athlete. And we want to stop and acknowledge that for you, that we know all the things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and then add in the complexities of past trauma and or specific things related to your athletics. So that's kind of what mental health is. All those factors affect your mental health. And so that's a basic understanding of what is athlete mental health. Now is usually where I like to kick it over to Max. Now that we've kind of outlaid all of the things that we know that you deal with every day, that now I'd like to maybe hear from Max and his experience as a student athlete and the things that he struggled with, so that you guys know you're not in this by yourself. Max, I'm going to pitch it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Betsy. So yeah, I like to come in around this part and talk a little bit about my experiences as a student athlete, what eventually drove me to join Cutler Wellness programs and trying to deliver mental health resources and education to athletic organizations all across the country. So I started experiencing mental health conditions around high school, middle to late high school. And I didn't really know exactly what was going on. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I'd often chalk it up to, it's just a bad day or a bad week. And, you've got a good family support system going on when you're in high school. And that was all right. I was able to get through that, but I didn't really know what was going on. And then I was lucky enough to be able to play baseball at a university in Omaha, Nebraska. And I went there and it started out fine, but quickly I started to realize, with all of the new stressors that were added by being a student athlete, that it was getting harder and harder to manage my mental health. Some of these stressors are a lot like a lot of the stressors that I see listed in the chat that you guys are responding to the question. Was a lot of trying to balance, school, you've got class, you've got bigger workloads outside of class, you got to make your workouts in the morning, then you got to try and fit in meals in between that and practice and games and all of that, along with compliance meetings and stuff. It gets to be very bulky and you have very little free time to focus on yourself and be able to do sort of mental health exercises and stuff that can sort of help keep the maintenance on your mental health. And so that's what I started experiencing when I got to school. And that wasn't affecting me just off the field. It started to begin to affect my performance on the field. And they sort of played off each other. As I started to perform better, I started to get more down on myself when I was off the field. And these things sort of built on each other and boiled up on each other. And that's part of dealing with mental health as a student athlete. And so after some time, I went to my coaches and I was like, hey, I'm starting to, I'm not doing well. I'm not in a great place. And after a little bit, they were able to direct me to a on-campus health and wellness center. A lot of universities have these centers for the whole student body, and you can go and talk to different specialists there. And the problem with these centers is most of them are open from 5 to 9. And as I just went over, for student athletes, 9 to 5 isn't a very open time for you to fit in hour-long or half an hour-long sessions, trying to get in between all the activities that you're already having to do. So I tried to do that for a little bit, but it just wasn't working out. And so I ended up talking to a sports psychologist who would come out to the school, but a sports psychologist is not the same thing as a mental health clinician. Sports psychologist is mainly just focused on sports performance. So he tried to help me with breathing exercises to help me on the baseball field, but not exactly dealing with, the emotional things that I was going through off the field. So I went to a new university the next year, and again, it started out fine, but nothing was really solved. I was still facing the same stressors, and I began to feel very depressed and detached from, my life around me. It wasn't necessarily a sadness, but it was sort of like detachment from the world around me. And as I started to experience that, I went through a mental health crisis of my own that eventually led for me to stop playing sports. It got me out of athletics. And it was during my time dealing with that I realized that there needs to be more education and more resources about mental health for specifically student athletes, and they need to be geared towards student athletes and the lifestyle that they live. So I did some research, and that's how I actually found Betsy, and I reached out to Cutler Wellness Programs, and I wanted to join their mission and make it my mission to help all of you guys, help all the student athletes out there have a better experience than I did, and be able to access all of these wonderful resources that are available in our world, and be able to link the athletes and the mental health resources together. So that's sort of the journey I took to get to where I am. And I hope that, you know, I can show you the guys that I can sort of be understanding of what you guys are going through, and that we are here for you guys. And that if that's one thing I want you guys to take away from tonight, is that we are here for the student athletes. We want to help you guys have a better experience and be able to better navigate your mental health. And so I will throw it back to Betsy.
Betsy and Max. Hey, Max, thank you so much. I'm so happy and so proud that you took those steps years ago that you did, when you realized that something heavy was going on, and you sought that kind of support. And I tell you, it's so inspiring to hear you say that, and to know that the student athletes that are on tonight are hearing that it's possible, and that it's there. Betsy, I did hear Max mention that there is a meaningful difference between mental health and mental performance. And I'm hoping that you can share for the group that very good video and definition and clarification between the two. But before we do, I'm going to put up another question in the chat. And student athletes, thank you all so much for sharing. What you have shared with us is really going to shape the rest of our conversation. And boy, we appreciate what you go through. It's heavy and it's a lot. So thank you for what you all do. We're so proud to have you with us, and appreciative. But I'm going to add a new question right now. And again, please respond to the host and panelists. We want to know, to whom, student athlete, to whom do you turn right now, if anybody, to whom do you turn to share and discuss your stressors? Who's your outlet? Who do you confide in? Who's that person or people? Or is there someone? So I'm going to put that question up. Student athletes, go ahead and respond as you hear from Betsy and as you watch this amazing video. So Betsy, back to you.
Great, thank you. As you all alluded, as Max had alluded to as well, and I think I referenced very briefly in the beginning, there is a difference between mental health performance and mental health clinical interventions. My good friend Lisa Bontasumi will handle most of this conversation afterwards. Lisa is both certified in both of them. She is a licensed clinician as well as a sport performance consultant. So I will be directing her a couple questions, but in order to give you all kind of the basics of what's the difference between the two, and I'll be honest with you, it's one of the biggest misnomers in all sport, whether it's the youth level, the collegiate level, or the pro level, because I know people in each of those levels and they do not understand the difference. Partly it's because they use the term sports psychology, which really came into play almost 25 years ago when Tiger was young and in his 20s and just got out into the golf. He talked about using a sports psychologist that helped him frame his golf shots and helped him frame his thoughts and those kinds of things. And so from there, the term sports psychology kind of got usurped into this group of performance. But there are clinical sports psychologists that are both clinical and sport performance, kind of like how Lisa is. So it's a nuanced difference. So let me open up, and I am going to share with you guys a quick 2-minute video. I just need some sharing. So Robert, give me some sharing ability, and I will throw that in there. Community, it's Betsy Cutler here from Cutler Wellness Programs and Athlete Mental Health Link. Today, I'm going to highlight one of the most important concepts that I actually integrate into all of my mental health seminars, whether it's for athletes, coaches, parents, or overall sport organizations. It's the concept of the difference between mental health professionals and interventions and mental performance training. They indeed are not the same thing. But oftentimes the term sports psychology is utilized for both concepts, and that has led to some confusion. Mental health is how people think, how they feel, and how they behave. And as it pertains to athletes, that's both on and off the field of play. Mental performance training is developing mental, physical, and physiological skills and techniques used to improve an athlete's performance. Now, it's combining both mental health and mental performance training that creates an overall mental well-being for our athletes. That being said, does mental health affect athletes' performance? Absolutely. Does mental performance affect athletes' mental health? Absolutely. Determining which one is the cause of your athlete's distress is actually the big key to determining which professional you need to seek help from for your athlete. So that's just a basic understanding of what is the difference between mental performance consulting and clinical intervention. So right now I'm going to toss it over to my good friend Lisa Bontasumi, who, as I said before, she is a licensed clinical social worker, as she's also mentioned. So she has done therapeutic intervention with all levels of athletes, but she also recently went on a journey to become a sport performance consultant. And I think, Lisa, it's important for us to obviously let our athletes and our coaches know what the difference is, because it does determine who you may seek help from. But there's also a way that research and everything shows us that athletes may be willing to come in and seek help on one of those, and it may translate to another one. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that works in Ath Mindset?
Absolutely. Thanks, Betsy. And yes, as Robert said, that your video is always great and outlines it really, really well. I love the colors and just how you break it down is super important. So yeah, as Betsy said, I've been a therapist for a long, long time. And when I made the pivot to work exclusively with athletes, I was like, yes, I can help and have the skills, the training, the experience, the ability to assess mental health conditions, prevent them from happening if the athlete comes to me sooner, which is great. We like to prevent physical health injuries, so why not mental health injuries? And then as I'm doing the work, I work with also a professional men's pro team here in California, the Oakland Roots. They're in the USL Championship League. That I want to deal with the performance too. I want to be able to address performance anxiety, lack of belief, the ability to let go of mistakes, real or imagined. I think, as Betsy outlined too, they go hand in hand. And so not every clinician needs to be a sport performance consultant, and not every sport performance consultant needs to also be a clinician. That's just where my passion lies and what I chose to do. The cool thing is that if you're one or the other, if you're a clinician and you find in your assessment that this athlete could really benefit from sport performance, mental skills training, you can refer to such professional and vice versa. And then you become part of that team behind the athlete that supports them holistically. So just to be clear, it doesn't have to be the same person. It can be. And the ones that are clinical sports psychologists usually. And I'm a clinician, but just in a different field. And I picked the social work field because I believe that it treats the human very holistically in their environment and incorporates ethnicity, race, religion, gender very upfront and intentionally in a different way than the science of psychology does. That's more intrapsychic, but we do all of it, which is the amazing part and fits my personal beliefs and my values. And that's why I chose that profession. We could talk for hours about that one as well, but I wanted to break that down. So a lot of times, because stigma is real, athletes deal with pushing through it, wanting not to be seen as weak, wanting to ignore and compartmentalize their emotions to get the job done, has always been the case. And so we are working really, really hard to have these conversations like tonight continue so that these conversations can be more and more normalized here. And then off this webinar with your teammates, with your friends, with your coaches, athletic trainers. But until that conversation gets more and more normalized, the athlete often comes to me or someone like me for the sport performance piece first, not realizing yet maybe that there are some deeper stressors that are impacting your ability to perform in your sport. So we might talk about like imagery, visualization, goal setting, breath work, things like that to help you perform. Let's say we'll take with Max with baseball, hitting. If hitting is not going well, we can deal with your pre-hit routine, your approach to the plate, what you're doing in between pitches, and really focus on that. As I get to know the athlete and we build a relationship, it might be discovered that there are other areas where there's some challenge, maybe stress or anxiety in test taking, some stress in your intimate partnership, some stress with your family. I have a collegiate athlete I'm working with right now whose mom has stage 4 brain cancer, and that is a preoccupation, to say the least. And she's a volleyball player, and like trying to keep showing up day in and day out to her sport while her heart is being tugged by what's going on at home is an almost impossible feat. But we have tactics and ways to talk about it. So I can talk with her about her performance on the court, and then, okay, what are ways that we can deal with how you're feeling about your mom? So those are just some examples, but I feel like oftentimes the entree into support in professions like mine is the sport performance, because it's like easier to tackle. It's less personal potentially. But sometimes then someone's coming to me and saying, I'm having a panic attack every time I step on the field. Like I'm literally feel like I can't catch my breath. I'm so nervous. I don't want to let my team down, et cetera, et cetera. They actually have a panic attack where they're like, for about 40, 50 seconds, they literally can't catch their breath. And they're like, just super panicked, and we'll talk about that from the mental health piece. How often has this been happening? How, in what situations does it happen? Is it only on the field? Is it somewhere in other areas of your life? I'll assess that. We'll address that and try to get some solidity and stability there. And then maybe talk about sport performance challenges. So just because you're an athlete doesn't mean you're going to have a sport performance challenge. You definitely could have a mental health challenge. We could just stay there and only talk about family, relationships and things and not ever get to sport performance. Just because you're an athlete doesn't mean you have a sport performance issue. So, but that's my job to get in there and understand and build that rapport and trust to understand you as a human, to figure out what is going on. And then we go from there. So that's a little bit of the difference. Betsy, did I address your question adequately?
Yeah, you did, absolutely. And you helped, I think, define for our athletes that there's several ways in order to get to the help that you need. And that the outcome on the other side may not be related to the actual presenting issue. And that's okay. That's part of the process. And I think you're right. There's a big concept of the whole stigma that goes along with being a collegiate athlete, that goes along with the whole concept of BMOC, big person on campus, and not wanting other people in your community to watch you walk in to a counseling center. So stigma is alive and well, and we doing things like this and making mention of, National Mental Health Day is continuing to break down that stigma. Another piece of stigma that I do want to throw out there that I also put in all of my webinars is this concept of the mental health continuum. I'm not going to go into deep about that. That's something that I give in my educational seminars to both athletes and to coaches. But this just seemed like it was a good time to say that, considering what today is. And that mental health continuum is basically saying that all of us, are human beings, and that all of us fall on that scale of thriving all the way to surviving, and that we all are on it and we all are in it together. As a mom, as a business owner, as Lisa, as a clinician, as a student athlete, as a youth, we all find ourselves, our coaches, our athletic trainers, everybody is on that mental health continuum. And that if we acknowledge that, then we continue to decrease mental health stigma, because it's not that 1 in 5 have mental illness. It's hashtag 5 in 5. We all are on the mental health continuum and we are all in this together. So I just wanted to close out that section with that.
And
may I add
Betsy,
one more? I'm sorry. Can I add one more closing? Sorry, Robert. I do want to say, yes, today is World Mental Health Day. And when there are special days like this in our calendar, it's a time to, I don't think, just pay attention to our own mental health today, but make a commitment every day moving forward that we will pay attention to our own mental health, our teammates' mental health, and make that a priority on the day-to-day, not just today. So let this be a day to recommit to that.
I tell you what, this is wonderful to hear, Lisa and Betsy and Max. Also, as you talk about making this a focus every day and being supportive of peers and aware and spreading the knowledge and starting to have the conversations, I do want to let y'all know something, that I am so impressed by our National Association of Student Athletes and Dranon in particular. I want him to tell you something really neat that ASA is doing nationwide this year. Dranon, do you want to tell him about the core?
Thanks, Robert. And before I talk about that, I just want to thank you, Max, Betsy, Lisa, and Robert. I think one of our biggest objectives this year in ASA is we have these 5 different subcommittees, and then one of them is student athlete mental wellness, student athlete wellness, and then this is the stuff that we are trying to do. And so having these conversations, hosting these webinars and just kind of breaking the stigma, breaking the barrier, and getting these resources to many student athletes as we can, this is one of our biggest goals. And so to do it now is really awesome. And thank you to all of our other panelists.
That's great, Dranon. Thank you so much for your leadership on this and helping student athletes across the nation know that it's okay to say, hey, there's something that's not quite right, whether it's with me or with my colleague, my teammate, and this is outstanding. I do want to keep this going, Betsy, with a very solid point that you make with Athlete Mental Health Link, and that is the mental health playbook, where sometimes people have an area of expertise and sometimes they don't have an area of expertise, and identifying where that line is for somebody, whether it's me as a faculty member or maybe it's a coach that wants to help but also needs to understand, wait a minute, there's places where I do need to step in and assist. And there's times where I just need to turn someone for guidance and it's not my area. Do you want to talk a little bit about the student athletes and coaches being on the same page?
Love that. One of our systems, one of the platforms of our systems is this concept called the mental health playbook. And so for our student athletes, it's your athlete mental health playbook. And for our coaches, it's the coach's mental health playbook. And so when we give our educational seminars to both those groups, some of the information crosses, some of it doesn't. But the information that crosses both of them is important information for both groups to hear so that they understand expectations and boundaries from one group to another. Most research shows that our athletes' expectations of our coaches may be a little higher than what it should be. And partly it's because collegiate level is so difficult. The expectations and the roles that our coaches play for our collegiate athletes is vast. A collegiate coach may be to one athlete a parent, to another athlete a CEO, to another athlete a mentor. There are so many different relationships that a collegiate coach is managing within their team. So that's part of the expectation issue, is that our athletes are coming maybe with different needs. And so our coach has to kind of modulate which one those are. On the flip side, research also shows that our coaches do not have high enough expectations of themselves, of their own mental health knowledge and awareness. So what we find is that maybe our athletes' expectations may be a little higher than they should, and our coaches' expectations are non-existent or really, really low of themselves for mental health education and awareness. So by giving seminars, educational seminars, to athletes and to coaches, our goal in those seminars is to modulate that so that we give our athletes appropriate expectations from their coaches and from their athletic trainers and their staff people, and to educate our coaches and help them build their own mental health playbook. So when we walk into our educational seminars, we tell our athletes and our coaches, you are creating and opening your very own mental health playbook right now. And we're going to start you with basic information, and we're going to give you some documents and some PDFs and some places that you can go that helps fill up your book. But each coach and each athlete's mental health playbook is a journey. You should always be adding pages to that mental health playbook, whether you're a coach or an athlete. You always have to be investing and learning more information and getting more awareness and seeking more resources. And that's kind of the goal of our mental health playbooks for our student athletes and for our coaches. The other piece is by educating them that hopefully we've got them at least in the same book. And as they continue through the season, if coaches are embracing another concept that we have, it's called coaching with care. And that is about teaching our coaches how to handle mental health in the team dynamic, and how to be positive and reframe and do a paradigm shift in how they address their coaching and their coaching style with their athletes. So that way the athletes feel like the coaches are invested in them holistically, not just their performance, but who they are as a total person. And that's kind of what the coaching with care piece is for our coaches. But so if we can get them at least in the same book, then maybe as the year goes through, our coaches opening up and having mental health discussions with their coach, with their athletes. They're taking 15 minutes of a team meeting or a team practice to have a mental health topic. You know, it may be just if you're a girls volleyball team, maybe you're going to talk about the female triad. But that's going to eventually get our athletes and our coaches on the same mental health page of the playbook. Are we there yet? No. And if we can get in and get those basic information modules to both of those groups, we're going to find that expectations, boundaries, and that playbook page is pretty darn close to being where everybody needs to be. I don't know, Lisa or Max, if you guys would like to make a comment about that.
I like to hop in around this part and give a little bit of an anecdote about my time as a student athlete, and actually as it was coming to a close, when I was experiencing my highest level of mental distress and was in a mental health crisis. I actually talked to my head coach about it, and sort of the moment that I realized that there was sort of a gap that needed to be closed in sort of the way that athletic organizations and institutions are handling mental health for their student athletes, and specifically for how coaches are able to help their student athletes. My coach said, and he was basically said that I want to understand what you're going through and be able to help you, but I don't really know how. And that's sort of what we're trying to cover, the gap we're trying to cover of getting athletes and their coaches on the same page of the mental health playbook. We want to cover that gap of giving them the knowledge and the education about not only how to help their student athletes find their way to the right resources, but also just to have a little better of a sense of what they're going through, so they can empathize with them better. And as stigma begins to erode away, coaches are beginning to understand that it is more of a problem that needs to be addressed. And so now we are trying to figure out how to help them address the problem of mental health with their student athletes. And Lisa, if you would like to comment on it too.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Max, for your comments. I mean, I think if there are coaches in this audience or athletic trainers, like I don't want you to feel intimidated by having that mental health conversation. Like, we're not asking you to be a clinician. We're not asking you to figure out what might be going on with your athlete. It's about being open to conversations and inviting the conversations. Just like, how are you doing? Like, asking questions other than their sport. How are you doing? How's your family? How's your classes going? I know you're traveling back home for the time off. How are you feeling about that? Like, it's just inquiring human to human. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm wondering if there's like a mental health issue going on. Mental health, again, as Betsy has described, is on a continuum. For us to ask those questions early on can be preventative, can really be preventive. So please don't be intimidated to just ask. Basically, a mental health question is anything other than the sport. How are you doing? Or even, how are you doing in your sport? How are you feeling about, the position that you're playing right now? How are you feeling about our travel schedule? How are you handling that? So I just wanted to put that in there. Like, we're not asking you too much, and for you to know that you don't have to handle the answers to these questions on your own. To know who is part of the team, the athletic trainers, other professionals, Betsy, myself, Max, Cutler Wellness Programs. There's ways to understand. Robert and Drainen, awesome. So please don't feel like you have to do it all on your own as well. So I wanted to make sure that point was stated.
Betsy, are you okay? We're at about 7:49. Are you okay if we ask our audience members to put forward any questions if they have them? Okay.
We are ready. We are here. We want to help and support you all. If it's not an answer that we can give you, we will research and get you the answer to it. You've got at your disposal right now some lots of different resources. So please send us whatever questions you have.
We will keep an eye in the chat, student athletes, if you have any questions for our presenters these next few minutes. But also, Betsy, if you want to reinforce for us those three barriers you mentioned that might keep a student from taking that step. And Lisa, you've helped many student athletes get through that step. Max, you took that step yourself to cross that threshold and reach out. What are those three barriers that come up so many times for a student? One more time.
So the first barrier for athletes to seek mental health help is mental health illiteracy, meaning that our athletes may not understand the difference. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They may not understand the difference between being blue and being clinical depressed. They don't understand. So if they have a breakup, and we all have gone through breakups, and they all are so very difficult, but when you are struggling after a breakup for a week or two, absolutely, that seems very sensible and reasonable. If after 5 or 6 weeks you're still struggling to get out of the bed, to make it to practice, to do basic daily events, then you may have crossed from something that is a normal response to something that may be clinical. And 18, 19, and 20-year-olds don't know that. They don't have that information. And what's a way for them to find that information? Well, I'm going to tell you it's the app, because that's where we have common signs, is in the app. But that's one way that we help to tackle that illiteracy, is that lack of basic knowledge, and is also to have educational seminars. The second one is access to care. I actually saw somebody who wrote in here that their campus, they have one campus counselor. That is what we're probably going to find more often than not for an NAIA school. And that's not throwing shade. It's just the reality. And let me tell you what, there are D2, D3 in the NCAA establishments that only have one, and probably like you all may not even have a campus counseling center on their campus. So you all are not alone in that. That is just a factor that we need to deal with. And so access to care, just like what Matt said, he went to a major D1 institution, and their campus counseling center, and by the way, 99% of campus counseling centers, no matter what level and what conference you're in, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So if you all could make sure that your mental health issues from 9 to 5, how easy is it for a student athlete to go to that when their day is already scheduled from 6 a.m. until probably 9 p.m. So access to care is a huge, huge issue. And I know Lisa's going to jump in on that one. And the third one is stigma, obviously. I did research. My research showed that in general, stigma is declining. Fabulous. That's what it needs to be. But there's different types of stigma. And so personal perceived stigma, that's where I am fearful of you judging me, is still alive and well. My research showed that athletes support all of their fellow athletes going to seek help, but there is no way in heck I'm going to tell you I have an issue and that I need to go seek help. So that's the nuanced differences between stigma and what we still need to work on. So those are the three major barriers. And once again, mental health illiteracy, that's the education piece. It's access to care, and it's stigma. And I know Lisa is dying to jump in on those.
Yes, and I'm aware that some questions have come in the chat, so I want to be respectful of that. But I just want to say that, at AF Mindset, the clinicians that we are building and scaling up to provide services to all of the NAI colleges through Cutler Wellness programs are clinicians that don't just do 9 to 5 services. We know the extent of the rigor of a schedule. So, I've told Betsy this before, like I see some of my clients or my athletes like at 5 a.m. right? Like sometimes we talk on the phone, they're in their headsets, right? They're riding their bike to the first training of the day. And we do like just a 25-minute like session that way. And so it's not going to be me sitting behind a desk and talking to you about like how things are going and doing the session that way. I have to be creative. I have to meet you where you're at, figure out when is that time that I can take. Maybe you're getting a treatment and you're on ice and you're by yourself and you feel like you have an opportunity to talk. Well, then that's the time. We're going to work around your schedule. Also, the piece of stigma around religion, ethnicity, culture, and even the sport culture of, again, what is mental toughness? What is it supposed to be? What is it now? For so long, it's been pushing it through, sucking it up, ignoring it. Now, mental toughness means, learning and recognizing that you're in an adverse situation, learning the tools to cope with it, and then coming out on the other side and building that resilience. So that's mental toughness. The definition from here on should be that. I mean, it's becoming more and more normalized that it's that. And today it's important to state that again. But I know there are some questions in the chat, and I know there were some stressors that the student athletes were putting in there that I'm happy to address as well. But Robert, I'll let you manage the questions from here.
All right, sounds good. Student athletes and guests, please continue to use the chat. I'm going to take all those, pull them into a private document of my own, and reach out to each of you to let you know where to turn for whatever answer it is. We've had questions about, hey, how can coaches get more aware of the mental health playbook? And that's, again, that's an offline conversation. We'll set you up with Betsy. Can the NAIA encourage more mental health training? Absolutely. Whoever put that, I know who you are. I'll reach out and we'll have that conversation. If there's other topics down the road, student athletes, that you would like the national office to host a conversation about in one of these Sunday speaker series sessions, please reach out. My email and my phone are there in the chat. Dranon has put his information in the chat as well. That's more for any thoughts, student athletes, you might have about the student athlete experience, right? How's your time on campus? How was your recruiting process? How are the championship processes going? Again, we're here to begin the conversation tonight, and all your thoughts in the chat. Student athletes, I'm so proud of some of these ideas and questions that we've seen. We will absolutely reach out and keep the conversation going with each of you. But this has been so wonderful. Max, Betsy, Lisa, Dranon, we're right up against time. We got about 2 minutes left. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I just want to start by saying, student athletes, it has been an absolute joy for me to be connected with the NAIA in the short time that we have, that we all are here to support your overall wellness, and that it has been wonderful, and that you all have an advocate in Robert actually in the conference office. And so we all are here to support you all, and he is here to support you, and I've been so really impressed by that. So I just wanted to pass that along to you all. And that I feel like that Cutler Wellness Programs, and Robert and I talked about this week, is kind of an extension of his office. And so we are just dedicated to your overall athlete mental health and wellness, to our coaches' mental health and wellness. I will tell you, a piece of my coaching seminar is about how coaches need to take care of themselves. And Lisa makes a point in that seminar that she can do counseling for coaches too, because what is it? Hashtag 5 and 5. We're all on the mental health continuum. And if we start there and we end there, then we all know that we all are built and made for this, to do it all together.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy. I too wanted to pipe up and give a big thanks to the NAIA for giving us the opportunity to come and speak to you guys. I hope you guys got a lot out of joining us for this seminar, if you weren't able to join us for the first one. And like I said, if I want you guys to take one thing away from this seminar, it's that there are resources around you, and working to access them, being able to overcome the stigma and overcome, some of the other barriers in your way. It is possible, and you have to, keep finding the best way to do it. And us as Cutler Wellness Programs and the NAIA, we will continue to work for you guys to make sure that you have easier access to those resources at your schools and wherever you are as student athletes. So yeah, thanks so much for having us on to speak. And Lisa, if you'd like to close out.
Yeah, thanks, Max. I mean, again, as Betsy and Max have both said, the NAIA with Robert at the helm here, prioritizing athlete mental health is so huge. It's trailblazing. It's super important. Please know that you guys are taken care of. We do want to align, with NAIA and with Robert, and me being, a part of Cutler Wellness Programs with the clinician side of it is just super important. NAIA schools are small, but they are not to be deprioritized in athlete mental health. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the notoriety of your school or your conference. You deserve to have access to resources, education, and sport performance and clinical services to help you be the best humans you want to be at college and afterwards. You know, these skills and the things you're going to learn about yourself will carry you in to life after sports, into your careers. So again, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Betsy, Max, Drain, and I hope to speak with you more, and just like happy to be here today, especially on World Mental Health Day.
Well, thank you, everybody. Everyone that listed something in the chat, again, please reach out to me offline tomorrow. So just one-on-one tomorrow. We can follow up on whatever you have. A few of you have great ideas about starting support groups on campus. We can help get that done. There's some really good guidance out there. So just, again, reach out. We'll keep the conversation going tomorrow. And Dranon, thank you so much for being here and being an advocate for your peers on every campus. The student voice is loud and it's being heard very clearly. So my friend, thank you for everything that you're doing for the student athletes in the NAIA. You're doing great work, my friend. Good night, everybody.